During this service, we're going to talk about community. We're going to talk about the church as far as community. And I've got a picture I want to put up there to see. Anybody remember this guy? And Brian, you're going to love this. Anybody remember who that was? Biggs. When we first started this church not too long after, he came and actually was working here, working with the students. But there's two things that stick out in my mind. One, I don't have a picture of it, but we were doing Jesus 101. He was driving my truck, and he said his foot slipped on the accelerator, and he was flying down this road here. Students were hanging out of the truck, and Brian could attest how red my face got, and he immediately pulled back in, and I said, no. That's not what I want to talk about Biggs. But Biggs talked about community, and when he talked about community, he said you can't have unity without community. And you guys may pick up on that right away, but for me it was like this light bulb that came on. How cool is that? You can't have one without the other. So, but we are going to look at community. We're going to look at that in references how the church can really live out this community. And I love Rick Warren, who pastors a church in Saddleback. He has this. It's done. There it is. When we look at these 5 purposes of the church, and when we sat down and try to kind of map out what we're going to talk about over these first few weeks, and then these next few weeks, these purposes of the church, everything that we do should meet one of these purposes of the church. We can go to Scripture. Brian spoke on Acts chapter 2 the other day. We're going to look at that again today briefly. But when we look at everything, whether it's worship, our love of Jesus, when we talk about worship, we look at evangelism, telling others about Jesus. We look at fellowship, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and I think that's more like living like Jesus. Discipleship, helping others to grow to be more like Christ, to be like Jesus in the last one, service, just serving for Jesus, really being His hands and feet as we go out. But today I want to start off in Acts, and I apologize because we are going to move around just a little bit, but I can't talk about community without looking in Acts chapter 4, verses 42 to 47. I actually have this on the screen, but if you have your Bibles, if you want to kind of get in the habit of looking for that, finding out where it's at, but we're going to look at Acts chapter 4, verses 42 through 47, and then to really get this picture of what the church, when we talk about fellowship, it's Acts chapter 2, 42 through 47. But Acts chapter 2, 42 through 47. And before we dive into that, I'll give you a few minutes to find that. But I want to pray, and then we're going to break this down and see how we as the church today can actually be this community that God has called us to be. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, as we look at your word, we look at this church, Lord, we kind of sense the excitement about what is going on there. Lord, I pray that we would also sense that same excitement today as we go forward. Lord, I pray as we look at this fellowship, this community, that you not only called this church in Acts to be, but Lord, we also know that you called us to be as well. So I pray that you would just help us to be more like you. And I pray if there's somebody here today that doesn't know you, that maybe as we go through this, that they may see a glimpse into your heart, a glimpse into your love, Lord, that you have for them. In your Son's name we pray. So when we look at this one, as far as these verses here, it starts out as they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he had in need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So when we get this picture of community, and we see right at the beginning where he talks about they were devoted, one talks about the teaching, that they were also devoted to the fellowship. And we have to kind of define fellowship so that we know what we're talking about. And one, if we look, first of all, what is it? Koinonia, one of my favorite Greek words in the New Testament, because it represents this level of intimacy that we actually have within the church. This level of intimacy that we actually have in the church. And the sad thing is, people outside the church, they don't experience. They may experience intimacy, but they experience it a different way. Those inside the church, and it's not just at Harvest Valley, those followers of Christ, they have this intimacy with Christ, but also this intimacy with those around them. One of the reasons why I changed the chairs to set like this, one, because we have this picture in our mind of what church is about. And it was last week I saw it when I was standing up here. Everybody was looking forward. They had these sad looks on their face. We were singing this happy song, and everybody was just looking forward. I wanted you guys to face each other and say, you know what? There's other people here. Church isn't just about looking at whoever's up here, looking at who is standing here. It's about, as you look across the aisle here, it's about them. It's about having a level of intimacy that we can only have as we look to see what Jesus has called us to be, this church. It's not just about facing forward. It's not just, we would tend to want to have this church where it's just me, because we don't like people sometimes. We don't want to be around people. So we think, I can have church. I can have it in my car. That way I don't have to put up with so-and-so. That way I don't have to listen to so-and-so. And when we have these ideas, we have to really question ourselves. That's not who Jesus called us to be. We have to really almost even question our salvation, because the Bible is pretty clear that we are to love one another, and we're going to focus on that in a little bit. So if we have this idea, and I don't know if we'll do this all the time, we may just kind of throw you up. It was fun kind of coming in, trying to figure out, okay, where am I supposed to sit? I'm used to sitting here, but now all of a sudden my number 28 is not there anymore. I can't find it. But, one, look around. This level of intimacy is not just for you and Christ, it's to be shared with you and those around you. That's why, one, I wanted to see this, and as we look at this, why this, or first of all, what is it? It's this level of intimacy, this community, this fellowship that we see lived out in the Scripture. And we can talk about it, but first of all, I want to say why. Why should we have this level of intimacy? And you can't find a better reason except to go and see what Jesus said. Because in John chapter 17, and to picture this, Jesus is on the cross. He has been beaten, he's been ripped up, torn up, spit on, and he's about to die. And these are his words. Listen to what he says here in John chapter 17, 20 through 23. It says, "My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe." He's praying for us. He was praying for Harvest Valley 2,000 years ago as he's nailed to this cross. He's thinking about us. "I pray for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one." Kind of expands it out. Not just praying for Harvest Valley, because not only do I want them to be one, I want also the other churches to be one with Harvest Valley. For us to be one with them. For us as we come together. "Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I and them and you and me, may they be brought to complete unity. To let the world know that you have sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me." So we start talking about why should we have this community? Why should we have this fellowship? That's what Jesus prayed. He prayed that we would be as one, that we wouldn't worship him alone, although he wants us to do that. But he wants to start looking at people through his eyes and realizing that each one of us are created in God's image. Now we, because of our lifestyle sometimes, because of our attitudes, our personality, we have these imperfections that sometimes are kind of ugly and sometimes are abrasive. But God still says, "I want you to be as one." God didn't make us to be robots. Go into the Tripoli song now if you want. But God made us who we are. We are individuals. But he calls us for this unity. Francis Chan, this pastor in California, he tells a story about this guy that joined his church. And he was in a gang. And I don't know if he was in the Bloods or the Crips or what kind of gang he was in, but he came and joined the church. Francis Chan tells the story. He was so excited because he came in, he started coming to all the gatherings, he was coming to church, he was coming to stuff, and then after a while he disappeared. So a friend of Francis Chan went to go see him. He said, "Dude," he's like, "what's up? Where have you been?" He's like, "When I joined the gang, It was like a family. Everybody had my back. Everybody that was there for me. And I thought when I joined the church, it was the same way. But the sad thing is, when I got to church, I found out that it wasn't like that at all. It was Sunday mornings, it was Wednesday nights, but there was nothing else. I don't know how he ended up, but I think for us, sometimes we find that same thing. I think if we even look at how we've been as a church, we go back to when we started, we were all about fellowship, not just, potlucks and eating, but we were there, we had each other's back. But sadly, just like in relationships, sometimes we start getting tired of it. Or we start, all of a sudden not caring about it. And when we start doing that, then we start finding ourselves, one being this not wanting to be around anybody. Being so one because we think that's all. And the sad thing is, I watch my dad, and I know that when we spend a lot of times, when we look at our parents, we pick up their habits, both good and bad. Ann tells me I'm a homebody. I like to spend time at home. I look at my dad, he didn't like to go out to see my mom's side of the family. He didn't really like to go see his side of the family because he was just satisfied sitting at home being by himself. Think about how sad that is when we see one as a family, as a church family, how we need to be there for each other. It's not just on Sunday morning. It's not just on Wednesday night. It's not just during the Say Hey time. But God has called us to this unity, this fellowship, this community that He is wanting us to be. There are 59 verses, if you go throughout the New Testament, 59 one another verses. 59, I've got them all right here. We're not going to read them, so don't worry about it. We'll be done in plenty of time for the food. But if we go through and we look at these, we can group them into several different kind of groupings. And I want to look at 3 of them today, because there's just like one here, one there, but there's some patterns that we see. And the first one that I want to look at as we look at this, these one another verses, and I'm going to have those up there, but the first thing is, we need to serve one another. We need to serve one another. In a couple weeks, Daniel's going to be spending a whole message on this, is serving. He's serving one another, but being like Christ in what we do. And one of the things about as the church comes together, as we serve one another. First one we see is in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. It says, each one should use whatever gift he has received to serve others, faithfully administering God's grace in various forms. When we're saved, God gives each one of us in a certain way. It doesn't say that He gives some, not others, but we know that each one of us have been gifted. Peter's telling us that we use it to serve others. Part of this community, when we work together as a team, when we serve one another. We also see in Galatians chapter 5, verse 13, it says, you, my brothers, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the sinful nature. Rather, serve one another in love. In this context, when Paul is talking about it, he's talking about one that we were slaves to sin. Because as sinners, we love to sin. We're like drawn to sin. Now all of a sudden he's saying, you know what? We're these brothers, us, saved Christians in the church, we're called to be free. We're no longer slaves to sin. Now all of a sudden, serve one another in love. He's like, you know what? Instead of putting all this effort into sin, why don't we put that into something good? Why don't we serve one another? Why don't we use these gifts that God has actually given us to serve those around us? To serve one another. I've got a new boss at Office Depot. One of the things I've talked about my old boss before, he was a great guy. But he didn't like to run the register. He thought that was kind of below him. This new guy we got coming in here, he may have his faults, but the thing about it is, he is willing to jump on the register without anybody telling him to. He's just that kind of guy. And for us, what we need to be kind of the same kind of attitude, that we're willing to serve one another, regardless of what it might be. That there's nothing really above us. When we are gifted in some way, that we're willing to use that. And we see at the end of this verse, we serve one another in love, and we start seeing this theme throughout these scriptures about doing in love. We talked Wednesday night about how, actually it was last Sunday, about what do we do when we see someone that's maybe not doing something, or how we can help them out. And it talks about speaking the truth in love. Here we see the important thing is to serve one another in love. So the first thing I think, if we look at these one another verses, that helps the community is to serve one another. The next one is to support one another. And when we go back and we look at that in Acts chapter 2, we look at Acts chapter 4, and it talks about how everyone was sharing their possessions. Everyone was selling this stuff, they were giving it to them, and they were taking care of anybody that had need. Does that make anybody else feel uncomfortable? If all of a sudden you felt that you had to sell everything you had and start giving to those. I think a lot of us start getting that, because it's that stuff. It's the stuff that we have, we like to hang on to. So one of the ways that we've got to support one another, we've got to support one with our stuff. And I think sometimes that hurts. Maybe if we were in the country, we sat down there saying, now the preacher's gone to meddle. He's starting to get in my pocketbook. He's starting to claim, what he's asking me to give stuff away. But we see these churches, and I think how amazing that must have been, because, it's not exclusive, I guess, but they're all about everyone and about doing these things, about taking care of one another. But I think also one of the ways that we can help each other, one, is with our words. Some of us, God has blessed us with stuff that we maybe need to start looking at. How can I help somebody? How can I support one another? Sometimes we don't even know about the needs because we are these prideful people. We don't like to say, what? I'm kind of running low this week. I need some help, but I'm afraid to say something. I don't want to bring it up. I don't want anybody to think about it. Most of us are a paycheck away from being like that. But with our words, there's something that we can definitely do, that we can definitely have. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. 1 Thessalonians is this great book, and Paul is talking to the church that they are struggling with Jesus coming back. And I think if you look in there, that they're not sure. One, has he already came? Have we been left behind? Jesus already taken those back to be with him? And Paul is, cautioning. You know what? He's coming back. He's coming back for those that have trusted him. So I started thinking, for us, how would our friends react to us if all of a sudden we tried to support them with our words by telling them that Jesus loved them, that Jesus was going to come back for them, that Jesus knows what you're going through? And I think we kind of start getting nervous. We think, our friends would think we're weird. But I think what happens is Satan takes those thoughts that we have of being either made fun of or thinking that we're weird, so we never actually try. I wonder, maybe those people that you work with, or maybe your neighbors, or maybe the person that you sleep beside at night, maybe they're just waiting for you to say, what? Jesus knows what you're going through. He knows what is troubling you. He knows what your struggles are. He loves you. Cares about you. So we can support one another with our words, this encouragement, by just really reaching out to them and telling them. We can go to scriptures, we can show them this. And I think we're afraid because we don't want to be treated as different. But we know that Jesus was different. He wasn't like everybody else. He was about caring for those around him. So we that we've got to serve one another, we've got to support one another, and then finally, we've got to show love to one another. More of these verses in these one another passages are about loving one another than anything else. It's all about loving one another. 1 Peter 4:8 says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. I use this verse in a lot of weddings that I do, because anybody that's been in a relationship knows that after a while, your sins start getting bigger, it seems like. They start multiplying. And when we truly love somebody, it's almost like that those sins just kind of roll right off of us because, one, the love, we're not looking for those sins. But if we want to find those sins, boy, they are right there in front of us. We can see them without any problem. But you know what? People see that in our lives. But if we truly love somebody, one, it says love covers over a multitude of sins. One, but we have this, sometimes this worldly kind of love, and we miss out on what Christ's love is really about. It's this unconditional love. For us to have the community that God calls us to have, we've got to love one another. Christy Nockels and Chris Tomlin, they have this song, and it's called Jesus, Son of God. And in this song, it talks about, goes through the scriptures, but it talks about this love that the world has never known. And what do you guys notice when you pull out here on Sunday mornings, when you drive down the road? Some of the things you see out there, you see houses. You may see businesses. But you see people. Now, not all those people, but a lot of those people, they don't know about Jesus. And I wonder, because if you look back in that John chapter 17, I want to read the last verse of that again. Verse 23, it says, I am them, and you and me, may they be brought to complete unity. And here's the real reason about unity. It's not for us. It's not just so that we have less drama in our life. It says to let the world know that you have sent me and have loved me. As we begin to be this community that God has called us to be, the people around us, they start seeing that love. As they come through these doors, they start experiencing that love. But until we get to this point, that we realize that Jesus wanted us to be one, that we are first one with Him and then one with those around us, now all of a sudden He starts using us so that people can see, one, this love that started with Him and then is lived out through us. So the question, first of all, have you experienced that love yourself? Do you know that just when Jesus was on the cross, He was praying for us, but also He was praying for you. He went to that cross for you. He showed His love for you. Even though you did nothing to deserve it, none of us have done anything to deserve it. He loves us so much, He was willing to give up His life. But yet then He calls us to be this one, this community. Paul Tripp says, you can't fit God's dream, if I can use that language for His church, inside of the American dream and have it work. It's a radically different lifestyle. It just won't squeeze into the available space of time and energy that's left over. For some of us, that's the reason we can't be that community. We can't have that intimacy with those around us because we have filled up our life with so much stuff on the outside that now all of a sudden we have no longer time for those on the inside. But I think God calls us to be different. He calls us to be a balance where we start having to see people the way that He sees them. Because until we get to that point, we're never going to have that unity. We're never going to be that church that He has called us to be. But it has to start with us. It starts as we become one with Him. Then we can start living that out only through Him as He gives us the